welcome to a very special episode of New Game Plus. I'm Tim, and I'm not joined by Kirsty again.
No, I think she's off with her herd or something. Shane told me to say that. I can't remember what it was. Anyway.
But this episode, John Day from Disney Infinity.
Yes, now, obviously, we've dealt with John a few times. We've interviewed him, I believe, at E3 once. We've interviewed him when he came over. He's a great guy, like really down to earth, really affable. And it's just us basically talking about his upbringing, how he got into video games, how he ended up with Disney and stuff like that. It's a bit of a light-hearted romp through it. Have you played much of Disney?
I did. I played a bit of the first one.
Yeah.
We had some good streams of it.
Yeah,
got hands-on with the second one while I was at E3.
I've got to say, we'll
cool.
discuss it afterwards, but the figurines in that are friggin' awesome.
Yeah.
Like, again, it's made me care about Marvel again, and I didn't think I'd say that.
Yes, Marvel fans would just buy the figurines just to get the figurines.
Basically,
as well,
they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool. But I guess for now, off we go. John Day, here we go. Wiggles. Just because production hates it.
Well, here we are, the inaugural, inaugural? No, we're going to keep doing, I don't think inaugural is the word, but the very first, drinks, devs, dumplings. Let's
What
figure out a
a
name
privilege.
later. I'm here with John Day of Avalanche Studios, the producer there.
Yeah, one of them, yes.
One of them. Who probably the most recently known work you've been known for is Disney Infinity.
That's right.
So how's it been working on with the House of Mouse on something like Disney Infinity?
Well, one of the great resources you have working for Disney is just the wealth of intellectual property we have available. I mean, I have been a fan of Disney my whole life. I've been a huge Marvel fan. We recently acquired Lucas, and I'm a huge fan of that stuff. So having access to these properties and being able to make things out of them has been just spectacular.
But it obviously didn't start there.
No.
You had to have come into it from a different point of view. I mean, tell us, when you were young, did you ever think that you'd be sitting here across from me talking about, Disney characters that, you can play in a video game?
Not at all. I mean, as a kid, I played video games from as early as I can remember. I mean, my old man was in the PC industry when that was kind of a new thing, and he never would let me have a video game console as a kid, because it was a toy, but a PC was a piece of productive hardware, right? So I had a PC, which I used to play video games all day long. And so I've always loved video games. I think I fantasized about being involved, but never really figured I would end up there. I figured I'd do some business thing like my old man did.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I mean, was there something from those days that stood out as the inspiration, or something that you took inspiration from later on?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there were so many kind of formative games of my youth. A lot of the Sierra adventure games and the LucasArts adventure games like Secret of Monkey Island and these games.
And Police Quest.
Yeah, Police Quest was the very first adventure game I played, actually.
The
first Police Quest, yeah. And since I was a PC gamer, not a console gamer, that was the direction I went. And yeah, I think that I've forever had kind of this love of and a lament for the loss of puzzling in games. We seem to have gone all action for the most part now, and that puzzling has kind of fallen by the wayside, with some exceptions. But
well, and I guess that's probably goes into our next question. So you get to the point where you started out, you thought, right, well, this is something I'm going to make a fist of. What, was that something that drove you to make? Did you think, well, I want to make better games than we currently have, or was it just something you said, hey, I happen to be in the games industry, this is great?
It definitely started out as, I'm in the games industry, this is amazing, right? I mean, I started out in QA, which is, if there's a bottom of the totem pole, this is the ground under the bottom of the totem pole. You
this
know
is
what I mean?
the mop, not the janitor.
I mean, extremely important job, and we would get nowhere without good people in QA. And I have nothing but respect for them. But that's where I started, and it was like, oh, this is so great. I'm part of this amazing thing. But then shortly after that, I was like, I want to do more than just test. I want to get out of this and get into being able to influence things and start creating the vision that I thought I had, and got into design work, which I was admittedly terrible at. I was not. I remember going into a meeting when we were talking about it would have been a game called Tak and the Power of Juju 3. And I had all these great ideas that I'd stayed up overnight doing and drew sketches and had documents and was like, I'm going to impress these guys with, I'm a brand newly minted designer, this is going to be great. And every single one of them just got destroyed in the meeting, right? Every one of them. And I mean, I learned from that it's okay because nobody has great ideas all the time.
No,
nobody
that's true.
does.
We like to think we do, but perhaps
we absolutely don't. And even the greats in the industry, it's not that hard to find work they've done that was like, they had an off day or something. Ever since then, I still wanted to be part of making them better, making development better. I mean, my passion really has been management and building teams and improving morale and figuring out how to make stuff done, get stuff done faster. I mean, that's where I wanted to help.
And I guess that's probably my next thing. You studied that in college or university or whatever we're calling it.
Yeah.
And so it just seemed, I guess, natural for you to move into that ground, or was it just an opportunity came up and you took it?
Well, so, I mean, I have always been at Avalanche. I was there before they were Disney and after Disney, but that's been the only place I've worked in the industry. And so, yeah, I was a designer and I was studying business management, mostly because I kind of chickened out on computer science. I'd done some programming before, but it was hard. And so I got this business management degree, and me as a designer just wasn't working out. And they're like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I have this management degree. And they're like, oh, great, we'll put you in production management. Good luck. And I actually just a few weeks ago finished a master's degree in business management as well. So it's a passion of mine, and it's a place I fit really well.
And I think that's probably one of the parts of the industry that's not seen. I mean, we obviously know about the big developers, the big programmers, these people who have Kojima, Carmack, they have these names, but without somebody keeping it on mission, I mean, these creative people can just go off on these fancy tangents and never come back. I mean, how hard is it reining in? You see somebody's worked so hard on this idea, they've put all their creative energy into it. It's like, it's not going to work. Like, is that probably one of the harder parts of the job?
Well, I think that everybody who is working on a game, I don't think there's anybody out here that doesn't want it to be great. And if you can just help them understand, look, here's part of this thing that is great, and here's part of it that's simply not, and nobody could have told before we at least did some work on it, because what sounds great on paper and what ends up being fun, those are not the same thing.
No, very much
right?
not.
And so I think that on one hand, in management, we have an obligation to make sure they don't go too far down a rabbit hole, right? Where it's like, no, we saw your prototype, we have some decisions to make. But at the same time, man, nobody has a great idea every time, and encouraging them, it's like, look, this one didn't pan out, don't lose the passion, and it's not that hard for them to keep the passion. People that work in games are fanatical, right? I mean, you've met enough of us to know that, we're a bunch of fanatics. So, yeah, I mean, mostly being there to just encourage them and prevent them from doing too much of the wrong thing is what I do, and none of that's that tricky.
So coming into something like Disney Infinity, you're obviously managing both the expectations of gamers following the success of Toy Story 3.
Right.
So which for you guys was a huge title. Plus, obviously, maintaining the licenses, finding stuff that's fun, finding unique things about each. Has it been hard melding those two worlds together?
Well, I think honestly the greatest challenge has been figuring out when to cut it off, when to stop trying to do new stuff, because you end up burying yourself with you end up with the Duke Nukem Forever problem. Where you bury yourself.
We gotta have
with too much to
physics
do.
puzzles and dual wheel shooting.
But I think that ultimately it was okay. We have this wealth of great IP to draw from. We know we want to bring these things together really for the first time. I mean, there was kind of this ethos within Disney in most ways where all of these things lived in their own worlds and they didn't really intermingle. And the only place that was ever true was at the parks, right? The Disney parks, you have kind of this mix of everything, Disneyland and things. But elsewhere, it's like, no, there's kind of this sacred divide between Peter Pan and
this canon is this canon and this and near the twain shall meet.
Yeah, totally. And even when we were first working with Pixar on, because we had several Pixar characters in place that's involved in the first Infinity game. Had this meeting with John Lasseter where he said, no, you can't mix Toy Story and Cars. They don't mix. And he's like, and we're like, but when you play with actual toys, when you have the physical toys and you put them on the living room floor, you mix them all you want, and there are no rules about that. And that's kind of the inspiration we ran with to get where we are now. And now it's just a question of can we contain it enough to not let it get entirely out of control with all of the options we have.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. We all know the Pixar conspiracy about how they're all in different parts of the timeline. We'll go through it later. We'll go for that later.
Yeah, okay, fine.
But basically, is there like a major consideration you have when you think what's going to work for the next thing we're going to add to the series? So, I mean, obviously with the first generation, it launched with Pirates of the Caribbean,
That's right.
Monsters Inc., and Cars. Oh no, it was Cars.
Yeah, we had Pirates of the Caribbean, Monsters Inc., Cars. We had Toy Story 3, and we had. Why am I blanking on this? We had the Lone Ranger, right? The Lone Ranger as well. And really the decisions were simply this. One, what is popular and upcoming, right? Like, and then what do we think we can make into good gameplay, and what can we make into varied gameplay? So, the kind of like horseback riding and Wild West nature of Lone Ranger, totally different from Cars, right? And they were both great. So you had your racing, you had your Wild West, you had kind of your space adventure with the Toy Story 3, with the Toy Story, the kind of the Star Command playset we had before. And so that's been the thought moving forward, is let's find stuff that's great, that people are interested in, and that we know makes great games. Which is why we ended up with superheroes, because that's all of those things, right?
So, do you respond? Is it basically what you guys feel is the best strategy going forward as far as people, what do you think people are going to be interested in, or do you take fan requests? Because I always think of when you guys introduced Nightmare Before Christmas, that had to be in response to fandom, surely.
You would think that, and you would actually be wrong in that case. We had him planned out long before anybody knew what Infinity was, because I work with a couple hundred people that are all Disney and Marvel and fanatics of all these properties, and so internally we had these discussions where everybody had their favorite character, and everybody was throwing in for, we really ought to do Jack Skellington, or we ought to do Jack Sparrow, and we wanted a healthy mix of what's really current and popular, and a little bit of what's classic. We had Mickey Mouse come out. Toy Story. We had a Toy Story movie a few years prior, but Toy Story's had such a long run since the mid '90s. Being the first computer animated full-length feature and all. And everybody was throwing in what they wanted. And if you walk around my office, at everybody's desk, everybody has toys and posters and T-shirts and stuff that they're huge fans of. And a lot of it's Marvel, and a lot of it's Disney, and a lot of it's all of this stuff. And so really it was just, how can we whittle it down to what's reasonably popular, a couple of the classic stuff, and what's going to make for a great video game, right?
Fair enough. And I think with the introduction of Marvel, you have that effectively that same idea, because you've obviously got the Avengers, which are topical, which are relevant. Guardians of the Galaxy makes perfect sense. But people like Nova, Nova gets a mention. So has it been hard trying to find the right mix of those new ones, and from the comic book classics, people like Nova? Who are we going to see next that's going to surprise us?
Yeah, I think there's always been this idea within a lot of the games we've done, but especially even first gen Infinity. Let's include stuff that everybody knows, and a couple of things that maybe cater to a more ardent fan. Even within Infinity, some of the toys we allow the players to play with within the game, some of them get incredibly esoteric, right? We've got like the Super Soldier Serum Chamber, where where Captain America was effectively created, that you can build. And we've got like the Eye of Agamotto, which is, you have to be a regional Marvel fan to even know what that is. But you can decorate your house with it in the game. So, and then there's plenty of stuff that's hugely popular. We have a miniature flyable helicarrier, and pretty much everybody knows the helicarrier is now thanks to the
of course,
right? So we wanted to run the spectrum of super fans and also kind of the general casual public.
And I think that's going to be the greatest challenge going forward. So basically, what are you hoping people take away from the second gen of Disney Infinity? What did you recognize in Disney Infinity 1 and said, let's see if we can expand on this, or let's see if we can change the way this works?
So what we saw in Infinity 1 was we did do a fine job in providing a good variety of characters to play with, and we found that people didn't necessarily buy one of the Lone Ranger characters because they wanted to play the Lone Ranger. It was just that they wanted a cowboy, right? That was what they identified with. And so we wanted to take that and then make it more meaningful. So when you played in Cars was a great playset, but the cars all more or less drove like cars. And they had great voices and great artwork, but there wasn't a whole lot of kind of fundamental difference to the way they worked. And superheroes are defined by why they are different, right? Playing as Iron Man really needs to feel totally different than playing as the Incredible Hulk. And now they do. We've added, skill trees and deeper leveling and things that make them feel truly unique. So now you can play with your favorite, and it feels way more unique than it used to feel, right? I think that was the big takeaway.
Well, then, I guess I have to ask you, who's your favorite character? I guess it's hard to say that, because there's...
Who's your favorite child?
Basically. But who's your favorite? And if they're not included, would you love to see them included?
Fortunately, they are included. When I was a kid, I was a huge Spider-Man fan. I mentioned earlier, I was like a fan of Spider-Man before it was cool. And so I kind of resented like the Sam Raimi films.
I struggled through the 90s as well. How many Peter Parkers are there? What's going on?
Yeah, well, and just that, now it was like everybody thought Spider-Man was cool. It used to kind of be my thing, right? And Venom was always my favorite character in that universe. And so we do have Venom in the game. He's fantastic. He sounds great. His power set's amazing. And our web swinging mechanic is really great, and only Venom and Spider-Man get it. Nobody else in the game can do it. So he's fantastic. I'm so glad he's there. Man, I have a lot of Disney stuff that I would like to see in the game someday, and I'm not, confirming anything.
No, of course, no.
But like, when I was a kid, my favorite Disney film was the Robin Hood film with the fox, right?
Yeah, you're preaching the community.
And when I was like, oh hey, we're doing Hawkeye and we're doing Merida, what about? And it hasn't happened yet. Here's hoping moving forward that it does.
Yeah, that's the true end of esoteric. Like, I still, when I'm bored and waiting things, I'll say do. See, anyway, I'm glad someone understands why.
No, I learned to play that when I got my first guitar when I was about 20. When I could finally get one, because my parents could no longer stop me from getting one. That's actually one of the things I learned how to play, was that bit,
Nice.
You know what, Nas? Hollywood does not love anything more than a good underdog story, so it's a good thing Marvel has released Guardians of the Galaxy, directed by one of my favorite directors, James Gunn.
I personally have no idea who that is, but the movie itself is really good. It follows the story of Peter Quill, Star-Lord. He's basically a child. He gets abducted by aliens. Then there's this big time skip, and he's an adult. He gets arrested with a bunch of other people who end up being the Guardians of the Galaxy. There's a prison breakout, and they are all forced together to go on some massive quest that they never expected to happen.
So he joins with 4 other assholes as well. Let's just call them that now. Yeah. So you have Gamora, so she's a real, notorious femme fatale character. Drax, who is just a big meathead, who's very strong, and metaphors just go way over his head. Groot, who is also essentially like a meatbag, but he's made of sticks instead. And Rocket Raccoon, so he's a real sarcastic, quippy, genetically modified raccoon who likes guns a lot.
Absolutely psycho.
Yes, absolutely psycho, and it's great. I reckon, the casting does feel a little bit off in that regard. Sometimes there are a few issues. Drax is seen more as comic relief, and haha, he's so dumb compared to his comic counterpart.
In the comics, he's very quiet, and he's
and quiet,
insanely strong.
Strong and silent type, essentially. And I think you have a bit of issue with a bit of that, don't you?
If you've read the comics, you probably won't be very happy with the choice of character. But if you're not, it's still an insanely good movie to see, regardless of whether you've seen the comics or not. And if you have read the comics, there are a lot of subtle nods, and a few characters show up out of the blue that I honestly was never expecting to see in any Marvel movie from now to the end of time.
Oh, like Lloyd Kaufman? Actually, no, that's not a Marvel character. But let's move on with that. So I'm really happy with the set design as well. I mean, I know it may not seem faithful to the source material. Hollywood, you've got to make a few sacrifices with. But I love the set design. CG is fairly consistent. Love the soundtrack. And as far as James Gunn goes, I'm going to be honest with you, I did feel a little skeptical going in at first, because James Gunn without ultra violence, I loved Slither, Dawn of the Dead remake, that sort of stuff. So I was thinking, what else has he got to fall back on? And I think Guardians of the Galaxy, it's just so fun, runs at a breakneck pace, I honestly thought that, he can do more than Troma movies. He can do Hollywood so well.
Yeah, as a Marvel movie, I really wasn't expecting it to be as funny as it was. And, superhero movies typically, the Marvel type especially, they're kind of funny. This one had me cracking up quite a bit.
Yeah, well, to close, I mean, I think Guardians of the Galaxy, as far as analogies go, I think it feels like the absolute delinquents that your mum didn't want you hanging out with when you were a kid. It's such a guilty pleasure, but it's just so much fun at the end of it. And I reckon you should go and watch it.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess we've covered Infinity enough. Let's go into the larger gaming sphere. What have you noticed in the industry, in say your 10 years in the business, that's been good and bad? What have you enjoyed the shift towards, and what have you enjoyed the shift away from?
So I think we're seeing it is now easier to develop games than it ever has been before. We've got great engines available, we've got great open source communities, and we've got all these platforms that are just more developer friendly. And so we've got a really vibrant indie scene, way more than we ever have before. And a whole lot of it's terrible, but there's a bunch of things that have come from the indie scene that are fantastic. I mean, like I mentioned, I'm playing a lot of Kerbal Space Program, and that's a nobody developer from Mexico.
Yeah, from Mexico.
And when was the last time we had games from Mexico?
Authenticating that game is a game in itself. I have to go to this site, then back to it's weird.
Yeah. So I mean, what an amazing kind of game development culture we live in. It also means we've got to sift through a lot of stuff we didn't have to sift through before. And in terms of things I don't like, I mean, we have a bunch of major players that are doing things that aren't that risky, right? That it's like, okay, we're going to release the next, I mean, admittedly, really high, I mean, Call of Duty is a high-quality game. It's clearly made by veterans that know what they're doing, they know their audience, they're making a fantastic game. they've just made the 14th one,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that I would like to see bigger players with the bigger budgets and the bigger teams more willing to take these bigger risks. And I mean, having studied business for 7 years collectively in college, I can understand perfectly well why they don't.
Yeah, of course. I still can't wait for Mirror's Edge 2, and I cry every time I see just the launch.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure. But I'm very, very excited by this great kind of indie community we have, and how easily we can see these really off-the-wall games that end up being fantastic, like Antichamber. You know, I think is kind of a standout lately. But even Portal kind of began life as like a student project, you know. And I mean, even when I was a student at university, I don't want to date myself too badly, but I first started going to college in 1998.
Wow. Okay. Yep.
Right. And
For what it's worth, I was in year 8, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Thanks
no
for that. But we would have never dreamed of having a video game be a student project at all, you know.
Well, I mean, even in Antichamber's case, it's actually made by a guy who lives just down here in Melbourne. It went to Swinburne, and Kirsty, our host, he went to school with him. So this is how small a world we're talking now. Is there games that you're enjoying? I mean, you mentioned Kerbal Space Program. Is there anything in particular you're enjoying playing at the moment?
You know, and we just had a recent Steam sale, and I, as much as I'm a console developer, I've always been a PC game player. And so, you know, hit the Steam sale, picked up DayZ. I think DayZ shows a lot of promise. It's clearly early in development, but I think it's got a lot of promise.
Even as a sociological experiment, passing off its capability as a game, I think some of the stories that come out of DayZ are worth it in themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. What a great game. I picked up for like just extremely cheap because I'd sort of missed it when it was new. I'd picked up the first Payday and played that with a couple of friends. Man, what a great kind of riff on sort of the Left 4 Dead idea, but you know, shifting the context, I guess. Fantastic game. And then I've played a whole lot of Infinity 2 as we've just finished development within the last few weeks.
Well, I guess there you go. Look, if there's, we'll wrap it up very soon.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give you a hard one. I'm going to stump you
right
at the end.
Please go ahead.
What is your hope for the industry? 5 years' time, we have this conversation again. You know, you're lucky enough to come back to Melbourne. What are you hoping to see from the business?
You know, I want that next mind-boggling game. The game that makes me rethink what is possible in games. I mean, I've had these moments before. I remember the first time I played Ultima 7.
Yep.
And I was like, you got to be kidding me. All these characters have dialogue and behaviors, and this world feels so huge.
Yep.
Oblivion did the same thing to me. You know, I'd kind of missed the earlier Elder Scrolls game. I got kind of stumped in Morrowind early on and kind of gave up on it. But Oblivion was like, oh my word, this world is so massive and vibrant, and I can do all these things, and my character isn't really confined to a role.
And there's little nooks and crannies, like you'll find a random camp that'll have something of interest.
Totally. Just to think of making that, and you know, we just recently at E3 saw like No Man's Sky. I'm a space opera fan. Loved Freelancer, you know, and to see that, it's like, okay, maybe we've got another one. This might be one of those games that makes me kind of rethink the way we can make games and what they really can be, because largely we're looking at safe bets otherwise, you know, and I'm hoping to see something that's not so safe.
I think that's true. I think we need to buck the stagnancy a bit and go from there. John, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me and being my guinea pig
so much.
on this experiment. Anything else you'd like to say before we go?
Oh no, this has been fantastic. I'm proud to be a part of it, and I'm excited to see. I mean, I'm hopeful and optimistic about where the industry is going to go. You know, I think that we have a lot of great opportunities, and I don't think it's been a better time ever than now to be, you know, developing games and seeing kind of what new comes out.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much, everybody. See you guys next time.
So, interesting fact about John, I don't know if you mentioned it in the interview, even though I did it, I should know. But he was born a Mormon, born in Salt Lake City.
Really?
Yes, and he went to live in South America for a while.
Oh.
That's how he knows how to speak Spanish.
Oh, okay.
It's very interesting. Things you didn't know about John Day.
Yeah, and ending up working at Disney, it's not a bad place to end
No,
up.
and I think the one thing I always take away whenever I've dealt with him, and I've spoken to him a fair few times now, is he's just so happy to be doing it. You know what I mean? And it's easy to lose that when you've been doing it, like he says, for many years.
Yeah.
You lose that kind of love of it. And if you lose that love of it, I think just go find something else. Go code websites or something. Go do something boring. But if you really lose your love of the craft, just pack it in, I think.
Yeah. I think that wraps it up for us.
That does. For next week, though, and I'm jumping this on you because I didn't tell you.
Okay.
Game of the half year for next week.
Oh, okay.
So you've got things to think about.
Oh, that's actually tough.
So
I guess we'll have some answers for you next week.
Basically.
But for now, visit our website, www.newgameplus.tv.
We've got Twitter and Instagram at NewGamePlusTV.
Our Facebooks are at facebook.com/New Game Plus TV.
And don't forget Twitch, YouTube, all /New Game Plus TV afterwards. Good
Thank
things.
you, Jason.
Thank you very much,
we'll
Tim.
see you guys next week.
Half year, game of, Wiggles again. Woo!